Hi, sophomores. Today we are going to continue reading Antigone. I want to remind you that yesterday we read the prologue. This is where the conflict was set up. We saw that Antigone and Ismene were arguing about what to do now that Creon has said no one is allowed to bury the body of Polynices, their younger brother, who really looked like a traitor because he brought in an army to the city of Thebes to fight his brother Eteocles. So remember that Antigone very forcefully said, I'm going to bury his body regardless of the law. And Ismene said, no, Antigone, you shouldn't do that because Creon has said anyone that breaks this law will be stoned to death in the public square. And they did, in fact, start fighting over that. So in scene one, we're going to be introduced to Creon. Creon, remember, is Antigone's uncle. He was just crowned king. I mean, guys, when he starts reading, you'll see me read his part in this scene. He's been king for like 2 hours, basically. The couple other characters you need to be aware of, the Corygos. The Corygos is someone you can think of as the king's lead advisor. He advises the king and kind of helps him figure out what to do. He also serves as a sounding board for Creon when Creon kind of bounces ideas off of him. So read with me. Remember, you won't be able to distinguish my voice between all the different characters, so your eyeballs need to be on the screen so you can actually read along so that you know who is speaking. We start with the Corygos. So remember, we are in front of the palace doors. The Corygos says, but now at last our new king is coming, Creon of Thebes, Menocius' son. In this auspicious dawn of his reign, what are the new complexities that shifting fate has woven for him? What is his counsel? Why has he summoned the old men to hear him? And so we have stage directions here that say, enter Creon from the palace center. He addresses the chorus from the top step. And now you can see, I'll kind of scroll down for you. See this long speech? This is an example of a soliloquy. This allows us to see all of the thoughts that are going on inside of Creon's head. Now, he gives this speech in front of the Corygos, who is his advisor, but also the gentlemen of the court. And so there would be another 15 or so people on stage who are listening to him give this speech. So I will read through the speech and then we'll kind of break down different pieces of it. Creon says, Gentlemen, I have the honor to inform you that our ship of state, which recent storms have threatened to destroy, has come safely to harbor at last, guided by the merciful wisdom of heaven. I have summoned you here this morning because I know that I can depend upon you. Your devotion to King Laus was absolute. You never hesitated in your duty to our late ruler Oedipus, and when Oedipus died, your loyalty was transferred to his children. Unfortunately, as you know, his two sons, the princes Eteocles and Polynices, have killed each other in battle, and I, as the next in blood, have succeeded to the full power of the throne. I am aware, of course, that no ruler can expect complete loyalty from his subjects until he has been tested in office. Nevertheless, I say to you at the very outset that I have nothing but contempt for the kind of governor who is afraid, for whatever reason, to follow the course that he knows is best for the state. And as for the man who sets private friendship above the public welfare, I have no use for him either. I call God to witness that if I saw my country headed for ruin, I should not be afraid to speak out plainly, and I need hardly remind you that I would never have any dealing with an enemy of the people. No one values friendship more highly than I. But we must remember that friends made at the risk of wrecking our ship are not real friends at all. These are my principles at any rate, and that is why I have made the following decision concerning the sons of Oedipus. Oedicles, who died as a man should die, fighting for his country, is to be buried with full military honors, with all the ceremony that is usual when the greatest heroes die. But his brother, Polynices, who broke his exile to come back with fire and sword against his native city and the shrines of his father's gods, whose one idea was to spill the blood of his blood and sell his own people into slavery, Polynices, I say, is to have no burial. No man is to touch him or say the least prayer for him. He shall lie on the plain unburied, and the birds and the scavenging dogs can do with him whatever they like. This is my command, and you can see the wisdom behind it. As long as I am king, no traitor is going to be honored with the loyal man, but whoever shows by word and deed that he is on the side of the state, he shall have my respect while he is living and my reverence when he is dead. Quickly, let's just break this down a little bit. He first uses this metaphor. He talks about his ship of state. Our ship of state, which recent storms have almost destroyed, has finally come safely into the harbor. It was guided by the merciful wisdom of heaven. So, this ship of state, this ship that he's talking about, isn't a literal ship. This is a metaphor for the government. He says, our government has weathered recent storms. The storms have threatened to destroy our ship. So, what are these storms? Again, part of the metaphor. The storms are all of the troubles that the city of Thebes, this kingdom, has experienced prior to Creon becoming king. So, remember that Oedipus was the king for a long time, but all of a sudden it came out that Oedipus had actually killed his dad, married his mom, and had children with his mom. And so, there were a lot of, and I'm using air quotes here, storms that the kingdom had to deal with. Okay, but the ship has come safely to harbor at last. So how did that happen? How is the ship now safe? Well, Creon has taken over because Creon is king. He says everything is safe now. This word absolute, when you look it up in the dictionary, it has several different definitions. Creon reminds the court that their devotion to King Laus was absolute, that they never hesitated in their duty to the late ruler Oedipus. And when Oedipus died, their loyalty again transferred. And so one of the questions that you have in your quiz today is, what does this word absolute mean? Because it actually has several different definitions in the dictionary. So I don't want you to look this up. I'll actually provide you with the definitions on your quiz, but decide how this word is used in this part of his speech, and then decide which definition is best. He reiterates that the two boys killed each other, and he really emphasizes what kind of governor or king he wants to be. He says that he is not afraid. He wants to follow the course that is best for the state, meaning his government, his kingdom. And he also says, the man who sets private friendship above public welfare, I have no use for him. So he's saying, I will always put the public interest first above my private interests. He also says that no one values friendship more highly than I, but we have to remember that our friends, I think this can include family, our friends and family that we make at the risk of wrecking our ship, our government, they're not real friends. So if our friends or family are going to do anything to harm the government, they're not good people. And then here he makes his declaration. He says, Eteocles gets buried. Polynices, he was a terrible guy. He does not get buried. And he gives this command to everyone because he wants to be sure that the court supports him. Okay, so let's keep reading. Corygos, remember, he's the king's advisor. He says, if that is your will, Creon, son of Menoetius, you have the right to enforce it. We are yours. That is my will. Take care that you do your part. We are old men. Let the younger ones carry it out. I do not mean that. The sentries have been appointed. I want to point out that the word sentries means guards. There are guards that have been appointed to make sure that no one buries the body of Polynices. Then what is it that you would have us do? Creon says, you will give no support to whoever breaks this law. Only a crazy man is in love with death. The Corygos, the advisor, suggests to Creon, no one would break your law because it would be crazy to break it knowing that you would be put to death. And death it is, yet money talks, and the wisest have sometimes been known to count a few coins too many. We'll come back to this. Creon is kind of obsessed with the idea that people are influenced sometimes by money, and that can lead them to break laws, even though those laws could get them punished with death. This will be an important issue that comes up for Creon. It says, enter sentry from the left. So a guard comes on stage, and the guard, I'll read this the best way I know how. Yeah, hang on, let me ignore. There we go. I'll read this the best way I can. I want you to get a sense of how the sentry, the guard, is feeling right now. He says, I'll not say that I'm out of breath from running, King, because every time I stopped to think about what I have to tell you, I felt like going back. And all of the time, a voice kept saying, "You fool, don't you know you're walking straight into trouble?" And then another voice, "Yes, but if you let somebody else get the news to Creon first, it will be even worse than that for you." But good sense won out. At least I hope it was good sense. And here I am with a story that makes no sense at all, but I'll tell it anyhow, because as they say, what's going to happen is going to happen. And notice, like, he even gets cut off here, and Creon says, "Come to the point, what have you to say?" So you can see how rushed and anxious the sentry is. Apparently he has something important to tell Creon. Remember, he's one of the guards that has been guarding the body of Polynices. He says, "I did not do it. I did not see who did it. You must not punish me for what someone else has done." A comprehensive defense. More effective, perhaps, if I knew its purpose. "Come, what is it?" "A dreadful thing. I don't know how to put it." "Out with it!" Notice how Creon's getting upset. The sentry says, "Well then, the dead man, Polynices." There's this awkward pause. The sentry is overcome. He's fumbling for words. Creon is just waiting. The sentry says, "Out there, someone. New dust on the slimy flesh." There's another pause. There's still no sign from Creon. And the sentry finishes, "Someone has given it burial that way and gone." And then there's a long pause. Creon finally speaks with deadly control. So you can see in the stage directions how angry he is. Creon says, there we go. Creon says, "And the man who dared do this," and here's the sentry's explanation. "I swear I do not know. You must believe me. Listen. The ground was dry, not a sign of digging. No, not a wheel track in the dust. No sign of anyone. It was when they relieved us this morning, and one of them, the corporal, pointed to it. There it was, the strangest. Look, the body just mounded over with light dust. You see? Not buried, really, but as if they'd covered it just enough for the ghost's peace. And no sign of dogs or any wild animal that had been there. And then what a scene there was! Every man of us accusing the other. We all proved the other man did it. We all had proof that we could not have done it. We were ready to take hot iron into our hands, walk through fire, swear by all the gods. It was not I. I do not know who it was, but it was not I." A couple of things I want to point out. Notice how scared the sentry is. And why is he scared to have to deliver this news to Creon? Well, he was supposed to be guarding the body, and this was Creon's very first law. And he's afraid, just like the other guards are, that they're each going to be accused of being the one who actually buried the body, which would get them sentenced to dust and sentenced to death. And I'd also like to point out, he said that the body was just mounded over with a light dust. And so I do want to point this out. So to the Greeks, their ritual of burying a body is very different than the way we would think about burying a body today. So when they buried a body, they might like sprinkle dust, they might sprinkle some wine, they might say a prayer, and then the body is considered buried, and the soul would be able to cross over. When we think of burial, we typically think of a body in a casket that's dug, that there's a hole that's dug 6 feet into the ground. So our burials look very, very different. All right. Creon's rage has been mounting steadily, but the sentry is too intent upon his story to notice it. And this is the sentry still speaking here. He says, "And then when this came to nothing, someone said a thing that silenced us and made us stare down at the ground. And you had to be told the news, and one of us had to do it. We threw the dice, and the bad luck fell to me. So here I am, no happier to be here than you are to have me. Nobody likes the man who brings bad news." The Korgos, remember, King's advisor, says, "I've been wondering, King, can it be the gods that have done this?" And now you see the stage direction. Creon's furious, and so here is Creon's response. "Stop! Must you doddering wrecks go out of your heads entirely? The gods? Intolerable. The gods favor this corpse? Why? How had he served them? Tried to loot their temples, burn their images, yes, and the whole state and its laws with it. Is it your senile opinion that the gods love to honor bad men? A pious thought. No, from the very beginning there have been those who whispered together, stiff-necked anarchists putting their heads together, scheming against me in alleys. These are the men, and they have bribed my own guard to do this thing. Money!" And he says this sententiously. "There's nothing in the world so demoralizing as money." Now he speaks directly to the sentry. But you, I swear by God and by the throne of God, the man who has done this thing shall pay for it. Find that man, bring him here to me, or your death will be the least of your problems. I'll string you up alive, and there will be certain ways to make you discover your employer before you die. And the process may teach you a lesson you seem to have missed. The dearest profit is sometimes all too dear. That depends on the source. Do you understand me? A fortune won is often misfortune. Lots to unpack here. So first of all, when the Korgos, the advisor, says, what if it was the gods? We know that they want all bodies buried. Creon's like, absolutely not. He did not serve the gods. The gods do not like this man. It can't be the gods. He said, and here's where he gets super, super paranoid. He says, no, from the very beginning, there have been those who whispered together, those who are stiff necked anarchists. An anarchist is someone who tries to overthrow a government. They've been putting their heads together, scheming against me in alleys. So Creon, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, says, no, from the very beginning, there have been people who've been trying to bring me down, people who don't want me to be king. Guys, this is so ironic and strange and paranoid of him, because remember, he's only been king for 2 hours, and he's saying, like, from the very beginning, these people haven't wanted me here. Well, you've been in charge for 2 hours, dude. That's not what's happening. He said, these are the men, and they have bribed my own guard to do this thing. Money! There's nothing in the world so demoralizing as money. He says, these anarchists who want to bring me down have paid my guard. That's what he's talking about with this money and this bribing. He says they have paid my guards off so that they could come in and bury the body, because burying the body would make him look a fool, because it was the very first law that he made. And so he's going to look ridiculous if the very first law that he made is broken within 2 hours of him becoming king. And so he thinks the guards actually accepted money from these anarchists. The irony here is that we know, this is dramatic irony, we know because of the prologue that it was actually Antigone. It's not anarchists. It is Antigone, the sister, who has done this. And I find it really interesting. Again, more dramatic irony. He says, the man who has done this thing shall pay for it. And the irony here is, of course, that it's a woman who's done it. But Creon just assumes that a woman wouldn't be strong enough to do this. It obviously must be a man who is willing to break the law. He tells the sentry, this is kind of scary, kind of creepy. He says, find that man, bring him here to me, or your death will be the least of your problems. I'll string you up alive, and there will be certain ways to make you discover your employer before you die. So he says, either bring me the person who did this, or I'm going to torture you and kill you. Wow, of course the sentry was scared. So here they have kind of a back and forth. Let's look at their dialogue back and forth. The sentry says, King, may I speak? Your very voice distresses me. Are you sure that it's my voice and not your conscience? By God, he wants to analyze me now. It is not what I say, but what has been done to you that hurts you. You talk too much. Maybe, but I've done nothing. Sold your soul for some silver, that's all you've done. How dreadful it is when the right judge judges wrong. Your figures of speech may entertain you now, but unless you bring me the man, you will get little profit from them in the end. At this point, Creon exits and he goes into the palace, and the sentry, he's by himself on stage, and he says, bring me the man. I'd like nothing better than bringing him the man. But bring him or not, you have seen the last of me here. At any rate, I am safe. And so the sentry says, oh my gosh, I'm never coming back here. I will never talk to him again. And then he exits. Okay, and that is the end. We'll start scene 2 tomorrow. So you're going to go into the quiz and you have some questions to answer about your reading for today. You can also access scene 1. It is in the daily folder as well. And of course, reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Creon. He's a really interesting character. He will eventually become our tragic hero. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye.